Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Lots of action over the next 30 minutes, but first let's kickstart with the big earnings of the day. The State Bank of India has reported a shocking loss of 4,869 crore rupees versus expectations of a minor profit. However, investors were consoled by the fact that the loss was because the bank used a large part of its income to provide for past losses. It has also taken all the loss it incurred last quarter on its bond book. Let's put this into perspective. Lata is here with the key highlights. Lata, the devil clearly seems to be in the detail in the case of this quarter's earnings for SBI.
Well, many positives and many negatives as well. So first, the bad news, the loss, 4,876 crore versus a year ago profit of 2005 and versus expectations also of either a minor loss or a minor profit. No one was prepared for 5,000 crore of loss. The gross slippages, that's what one looks at really. What is the fresh bad loan book that you have created? That came in at a more modest 14,000 crore. The market was ready to take anything up to 15,000 crore because last quarter it was 32,000 crore. So 14 was still a saving grace, but it's still bad news. Less than 24% of this bad loans have come from the watch list, which means there is still stress according to the bank's own estimates. The growth in loans, usually when you grow the good book, then the bad book starts looking smaller as a percentage. But the growth in advances is at 5.49, not something you can clap your hands about. The watch list, as we were speaking about, that which can go bad, is still elevated at 24,600, but lower than the nearly 29,000 crore that it was when the previous quarter ended. And the loss of 4,800 that we are reporting, that the bank reported, is in spite of taking a tax credit of about 2,400 crore. So technically speaking, the loss is almost 7,000 crore. But then, what are the positives? The positive is the net interest income of the bank, the actual income of the bank has risen by 24%. Nobody gave the bank that much credit. Everybody was expecting it to rise by about 14-15%. The gross NPAs, which is ultimately the book you will look at, what is the spoilt book, that has fallen to 10.7, in fact 10.69 from the earlier 10.91. So on the path to recovery, net NPA is even better at 5.2 or 5.29 versus 5.79. So a fairly substantial improvement. If you took the total gross NPAs in aggregate form, that also declined. It was 2.12 lakh crore compared to 2.23 lakh crore, which is good. The gross slippages, like I was telling you, 14,000 crore may look elevated, but it is much better than the 33,000 crore that was reported last quarter. The best part is, why was there a loss? Because they took out from their profit and provided for previous losses, and therefore now they have covered their previous losses up to 69%, what you call provision cover ratio. It was 66, it has become 69% for a large book that requires a lot of money. And, some 19,000 crores is what they've used, which is very good. It's a healthy balance sheet development. And then they've provided entirely for the bond losses, which is investments, bond investments that they hold. A lot of upgrades have come. Old bad loans now upgraded. That's largely because of the NCLT cases. They've got a loan given to Electro-Steel becomes good when it is a loan given to Vedanta, which is a better company, or a loan given to BHUSHAN Steel becomes good because Tata Steel has returned that loan. And finally, they're expecting more recoveries, about 4,000 crore in the current quarter from the new NCLT cases. So that looks like the positive. Maybe you want to hear it from the big man himself, Rajneesh Kumar, Chairman of State Bank.
The provision coverage ratio, or what could impact the earnings in the coming quarters, all has been absorbed by June. On the asset side, again in September, we intend to further improve the provision coverage ratio so that from December onwards there will be no looking back and there will be no hangover of the past credit costs.
All right, that was Rajneesh Kumar speaking on the sidelines of the earnings. But from earnings, let's get you the action from Dalal Street now. Markets today snapped their 5-day gaining streak. but remained positive for the week. So the Nifty holds on to that 11,400 mark, but ended with cuts of 0.02%. Sensex tumbled more than 150 points. Broader markets saw bigger fall. Banks shed about 200 points, led by State Bank of India, while mid-caps fell exactly 100 points. It was a sea of red across the board, at least today. Anuj Singhal is here to put this into perspective. Anuj, what do you make of today's trading action? And, you know, the fact is that it was a good week, but ended on a negative note.
Well, what a volatile day for the market today. There was quite a bit of, there were quite a few events which really punctuated the day today. There were global cues, Turkish lira, and most importantly, perhaps SBI results and the intraday move in the Bank Nifty. All of that playing havoc in the last hour. SBI easily was your stock of the day. Intraday, it first rallied about 8% and then fell about 8%. That was the kind of move that you had on SBI. And that was, of course, being mirrored by the Bank Nifty as well, of course, not in percentage terms. Other index losers today, Tata Motors, Sun Pharma, Vedanta, ICICI, Larsen, and Tata Steel. On the gaining side, Eicher Motors was one of your stocks of the day. BPCL and M&M did well. In the F&O space, Jet Airways was the top loser, followed by HCC, GSPL, JP Associates, Ujjivan, Bank of India, and Manappuram. While on the gaining side, you had names like Voltas, Berger Paints, and PVR. All in all, very volatile day, but some problems emerging now from global market and some questions on the mid-cap rally as well.
Okay, Anush, thanks for that. So, bad day for the markets, but good week overall. They have their dollar and we have our God. Those words from Turkish President Recep Erdogan have seen the country's currency, the lira, tumble over 12% in today's trade and has boosted the dollar against a basket of major currencies. So the rupee has not been spared. The Indian currency hit an intraday low of about 69.02 to the dollar, the lowest level since the 24th of July. It has recovered a bit since then, largely due to an intervention by the Reserve Bank of India. Year to date, though, the rupee is down by about 7.7%. On to a CNBC TV18 exclusive. Weeks after the telecom regulator or the TRAI released its latest recommendation for the 700 MHz spectrum, which is largely used for 5G, telecom operators have written a strongly worded letter to the telecom department and the TRAI. Telcos, in fact, say that until the stress in their balance sheet is fixed, it will be unviable for them to bid for 5G spectrum. They also add that the price cut of 42% for the 700 MHz band spectrum needs to be further slashed. So those are the two salient features of that. Just to dive a little further into this, what the telecom sector companies say is that they need reduction in levies. If you look at the kind of levies that the sector has imposed against it, there is a UFO fund, there is the SUC charge, there are about 4 different levies that the companies are charged. If that levy is made into a unified subsidized levy, that will significantly reduce the stress. That is something that the Department of Telecom is looking at. Those are the levies, various levies imposed on companies on your screens there. The Department of Telecom, according to our sources, is looking at a unified levy, but the companies say that this needs to happen as soon as possible for them to be even ready to develop their infrastructure over and above 4G and take it to a level where they can even be 5G ready. So that is one point that they are making. The other is the spectrum price cut of 42% for the 700 MHz band. They say that while, yes, they are not in a position to even upgrade the network and infrastructure to 5G, since they are right now concentrating still on upgrading 4G, what they say is that they need another half, at least, so another 20% of a reduction to the additional 42% to be able to even be financially capable of bidding for the next round of spectrum auctions. So that's what we picked up from our sources, and no official comments coming in though from these telecom firms. But here's the latest from the debt resolution space. In a setback for Tata Steel, the Supreme Court has refused to stop the second round of bidding for BHUSHAN Power. Remember, just last week, Tata Steel had moved the apex court challenging the NCLAT order that allowed revision of bids for debt-laden BHUSHAN Power. Now, the Supreme Court has directed NCLAT to decide on the case expeditiously. Bidders will have to place revised offers by the 13th of August. The NCLAT will now hear the case on the 17th of August. Remember, Tata Steel had moved the Supreme Court opposing the NCLAT order that allowed all the 3 applicants to revise their bids. Tata Steel asked the Supreme Court to stay the second round of bidding. That is what is the big insolvency case of the day. But continuing with stressed assets, while Tata Steel faced a setback in the Supreme Court in the BHUSHAN Power case, in the BHUSHAN Steel case, the NCLAT upheld its resolution plan. The appellate tribunal dismissed L&T's objections and said the Tata Steel resolution plan was fair and that it covered all operational creditors. The NCLAT also approved Vedanta's bid to acquire Electro Steels, rejecting an appeal by Renaissance Steel India. Remember, Vedanta's resolution offered about 5,300 crore rupees, which led to a haircut of a whopping 60%. Welcome back. You're still with After the Bell on CNBC TV 18. Now, the Supreme Court has stayed a Jammu and Kashmir High Court order that allowed moviegoers in the state to carry outside food to multiplexes. Now, the Supreme Court's stay comes after the Multiplex Association of India challenged the Jammu and Kashmir High Court's order, citing security issues and allowing outside food in cinema halls. The Apex Court's decision could have a significant implication on other states like Maharashtra, where the Bombay High Court is actually dealing with a similar matter. Yashan has been tracking that story in Bombay High Court, and he's here to put this into perspective. Yashan, firstly, take us to what transpired in the Supreme Court today. Why was that decision taken by the Supreme Court, and how does that have ramifications for us in Maharashtra? Does that mean that maybe in time we may see the Supreme Court voting in favor of us going and taking our food in movie halls?
So, Kritika, I'll go one by one. Essentially, interesting was that order which came from Supreme Court today, and interesting were the arguments behind it. Mukul Rohatgi, who was the counsel for the Multiplex Association of India, argued that allowing outside food when it comes to, cinema halls in Jammu and Kashmir is a major security threat, and also it will lead to a complete breakdown when it comes to these private entities which are cinema halls. Also, what he said is that Jammu and Kashmir High Court ignored aspects of safety, hygiene before passing this particular order. Not just that, he also said that it would be completely impossible for these multiplex and cinema halls to really check and scan all the bags when it comes to these food boxes or tiffin boxes. On a rhetoric note, he ended up saying that by that particular order, he should be allowed to carry his own whiskey in some restaurant or hotel and can call for soda from that particular hotel. So all in all, after really taking cognizance of all these arguments, prima facie, the Supreme Court has put an interim stay as far as the state of Jammu and Kashmir is concerned for allowing the moviegoers there to carry their food inside multiplex. Now, a very important point, the second part of your question, which is the implication which it will have on the PIL which is being heard in Bombay High Court. One thing, it's a small positive for all the multiplex companies because it opens up the revenue stream from the food and beverage segment from the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But do remember that the PIL council in Bombay High Court has referred to that particular matter and said that Jammu and Kashmir, despite being so vulnerable when it comes to the security aspect, has allowed. So Bombay High Court should also consider allowing outside food. But now, with this particular Supreme Court stay on that very order, the Bombay High Court will also have to factor in all the arguments which were made before the Supreme Court and the order itself and pass its own particular verdict on this case accordingly.
Well, as a customer, Yash, it does work out to be slightly cheaper for us, easier on the pocket. So let's see how that case transpired. But for now, let's move on to the other stories that we are tracking. 2.7 crore shares of AU Small Finance Bank have exchanged hands in a block deal. According to our sources, Warburg has sold 7.5% of its stake. Kedara and Christ Capital have also sold about 1% of their stake. Most of the stake has been picked up by promoters and institutional investors. The move brings down Warburg's stake in AU Finance from 15.5% to about 8%. In news that could give some joy to Tata Motors, Jaguar Land Rover's total retail sales have declined over 21% annually to 36,144 units in July. That is less than the average retail sales of the company over the past 6 months. Sales in China are down 47%, while sales in Europe fell 26.5%. So that is negative for Tata Motors. Jet Airways was also in focus today. The stock took a big knock after the company referred its first quarter results to an unspecified date. The company informed the stock exchanges that its audit committee did not recommend the said financial results to the board for its approval pending closure of certain matters. We don't know what those matters are. Welcome back to After the Bell. Now it's the last day of the monsoon session of the Parliament. The opposition MPs, including the Congress and the Aam Aadmi Party, protested outside the Parliament today seeking a joint parliamentary committee probe into the Rafale deal. Meanwhile, the Rajya Sabha has deferred the much-debated Triple Talaq bill. Chairman Venkaiah Naidu has said that there was no unity in the House over the bill. Parikshit Luthra, who has been tracking all the parliamentary action, is here with the details. Parikshit, take us through what transpired in the Parliament today and what does this mean going forward?
You know, we were discussing earlier today on CNBC TV 18 how the government wanted to end the monsoon session on a high note. Well, the opposition did not give them that privilege. They did not allow that to happen because the Triple Talaq bill has now been deferred for lack of consensus. Just yesterday, it was discussed in cabinet. Certain amendments were also brought in, but the opposition was just not happy with the surprise thrown at them. And Sonia Gandhi made it very clear that there is no change in the Congress's stand and it must go to a select committee. And this really forced the BJP and the NDA to make a retreat on the Triple Talaq bill. Having said that, the Lok Sabha has been adjourned sine die. We've seen massive protests today on the final day of the monsoon session. Sonia Gandhi leading a protest at the Gandhi statue over the Rafale deal, and you had parties like the Left and RJD also joining in, demanding a JPC probe. On the whole, it has been a productive session for the government. They have been able to pass 11 key legislations in the last 18 days. This was a rather short monsoon session of Parliament. You had key legislations like the SC/ST Atrocities Act, the bill to grant constitutional status to the OBC Commission, 4 key legislations relating to the GST that were passed in the Lok Sabha. So on the whole, the government would be happy, but the opposition making this point over and over again that mob lynching, the issue of NRC register, and the Rafale deal will be some of the key issues in the run-up to 2019. Back to you.
All right, Parikshit, thanks for taking us through those details. Let's get you the other story that we've been tracking on CNBC TV 18. Kerala continues to grapple with heavy rains and the resultant landslides. The death tolls in the state have risen to 27 now. Shutters of 24 reservoirs have been opened to drain out the excess water. The government has deployed 8 columns of the Indian Army in various parts of the state in order to aid the state administration with disaster relief and rescue operations. Meanwhile, the Cochin International Airport, which had halted operations, resumed operations today. And with that, it's time to wrap up this edition of After the Bell. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. Taking stock will take the action forward on the other side of this very short break.